Facts about Anonymous. Format and history. Anonymous was presented by Jason Byrne, who also used a hidden microphone to communicate mischievous ideas via whispering to the disguised personality. It ran for 5 series, with the last series broadcast in 2009. Byrne was offered funding for a further season, but turned it down, stating that it was too hard to find people who didn't know of the show and therefore saw through the ruses. He wanted the show to be remembered as being good while it lasted, and not being cancelled when it became desperate. Byrne was the celebrity who went anonymous in the final episode. Participants. The series is known for showing the then Progressive Unionist Party leader David Irvine in a humorous light in an episode filmed before his death in January 2007. Irvine was one of the 3 political representatives from Northern Ireland who agreed to partake in the program. The others were Paul Maskey of Sinn Féin and John Dallett of the SDLP. They were interviewed by Belfast comedian Patrick Keilty, who was in the guise of New York TV reporter Betty Silverman. Irvine's family consented for the episode to be broadcast in the aftermath of his death. In the opening episode of the 3rd series, Westlife member Nicky Byrne was dressed up as Mick Byrne, an evangelistic Garda from Kittingmag on a mission to clean up the mean streets of Swords. For the role, he had to put on Longford accent and Garda Byrne. He took the names of foreign nationals, asking them for their license to be in Ireland, asked locals for their cigarettes, and criticized people for walking too fast and speaking too loudly in the betting shop. He then drove around the local shopping center in a motorized trolley, making his own siren sound and asking people where they were going. He called to his own parents' house to ask for Westlife autographs and tickets for Croke Park, and makes a fool of his friends, former Leeds United footballer Gary Kelly and rugby international Brian O'Driscoll. Also featured in the series were model Glenda Gilson as a tree-hugging eco-warrior and TV presenter Craig Doyle as Argentine sport reporter Rodrigo de Pasa. The anonymous hacktivist collective, known as much for its self-branding as its anything goes, anti-authoritarian sense of online comeuppance, first came to public attention in January 2008. The occasion was an internal Scientology video starring Tom Cruise, which had been leaked to YouTube. The church, saying that the video was copyrighted, requested that YouTube remove it. Members of Anonymous, however, took issue with that request, and as part of what it duped, Project Chronology reportedly began launching distributed denial of service attacks against Scientology websites, blanketing church centers with prank phone calls and faxes, and doxing the church by releasing its sensitive documents into the public domain, for example via peer-to-peer networks. On January 21, 2008, a YouTube posted the template for future anonymous proclamations. The video, in this case, criticizing the Church of Scientology, includes the now common anonymous sign-off, "Knowledge is free, we are anonymous, we are Legion, we do not forgive, we do not forget, expect us." By the next month, Anonymous claimed that 7,000 people had staged protested outside of Scientology centers around the world, many of them sporting the now famous black and white Guy Fawkes mask, as worn by the protagonist of the film V for Vendetta to hide his identity. Notably in the film, the masses also wore it as they rose up to help overthrow the ruling dictatorship. By early 2008, Anonymous was already pursuing online attacks as a form of non-violent protest. By 2010, it was launching regular DDoS attacks against pro-copyright websites. But the group really came to public prominence during its defense of Wikileaks and its charismatic, if reportedly mercurial, leader Julian Assange. Wikileaks, of course, came under fire from the US government after the site obtained video footage from a US helicopter strike in Iraq that killed 2 Reuters employees, as well as 2 children. Next, Assange began to coordinate, together with major newspapers in multiple countries, the release of hundreds of thousands of secret US government cables beginning in December 2010. The government-orchestrated reaction was swift. PayPal and credit card processors MasterCard and Visa blocked payment to Wikileaks, which relied on donations to lease server space and pay staff. There's a short lifespan for a whistleblowing website that cannot remain online. In response, Anonymous mobilized, unleashing its so-called low-orbit ion cannon tool. with which anyone could participate in anonymous attacks by lobbing packets at designated websites. From there, meanwhile, Anonymous expanded its focus and backed what appeared to be numerous international chapters, has tackled everything from cartels in Mexico and child pornography file-sharing sites to takedowns of Israeli government servicers and U.S. law enforcement agencies. One of the most fascinating chapters in Anonymous history concerns Aaron Barr, the CEO of HB Gary Federal, who'd bragged about how he'd infiltrated Anonymous and was set to reveal the identities of its key leaders. Anonymous responded by hacking its HB Gary's email service less than 24 hours later, and claimed that a 16-year-old girl had socially engineered the social media-friendly Barr. Anonymous then released a slew of emails claiming the HB Gary had been retained by Bank of America on the recommendation of the Department of Justice to help it wage an anti-Wikileaks campaign after the whistleblowing website claimed to have damning emails about the bank's practices. Other emails, meanwhile, detailed secret cyber warfare tool-building programs as well as legally questionable activities. Barr, meanwhile, cancelled his appearance on DEF CON July 2011 panel titled Whoever Fights Monsters, Aaron Barr, Anonymous, and Ourselves. Arguably, the anonymous hacktivist offshoot group known as LulzSec being slang for laugh out loud, typically at the expense of others, outlulls the anonymous collective through the audacity of its public relations campaign, combined with near constant doxing. The group became widely known not only for its witty proclamations delivered via Pastebin and Twitter and nicknames, but also for its aggressive use of ASC2 art, as well as group members' erudite handles. Authorities ultimately arrested a teenager, Jake Davis, in Scotland and charged him with being LulzSec's PR director. The group's leader, Sabu, remains at large and active in the anonymous-related operations. While LulzSec announced its retirement, or at least the retirement of its brand name, members of the group went on to commission and likely participate in a co-branded effort with Anonymous dubbed Operation AntiSec. The new effort was ostensibly devoted to taking down established information security vendors on account of their scaremongering techniques. But practically speaking, many of the group's exploits have involved hacking into law enforcement agencies' websites and databases, defacing those websites, and releasing personal information on law enforcement personnel. Targets have included organizations as diverse as the Arizona Department of Public Safety and the Zimbabwean government. How do you operate an online group of hacktivists that embrace anonymity and pursue a common purpose, while preventing anyone from labeling any type of attack or data dump as being anonymous-led? That operational, if not existential, issue has bedeviled this group. Or perhaps for a band devoted to online protests with heavy doses of anarchy and irony, it just enhances its profile. Notably, a Facebook porn smack attack, a file-sharing site, and a plan to attack the New York Stock Exchange all turned out to be fake, or at least not the work of Anonymous. Ultimately, a handful of Twitter channels appear to broadcast accurate information on anonymous operations. Anything else, however, remains more suspect. If the various operations orchestrated by Anonymous seemed filled with machismo and bluster, some apparently step over the line, even for the group's apparently freewheeling figureheads. Notably, after the alleged disappearance of pro-Anonymous activists in Mexico, Anonymous announced that he'd been kidnapped by the Zetas drug cartel, and Anonymous promised to publicize the name of every Zetas informer or collaborator that it could get its hands on. But warnings from security experts that any such moves might put not only Anonymous members, but also Mexicans caught in the middle at risk seemed to kill the so-called op cartel. Is it ironic that the mask worn by Anonymous members comes from V for Vendetta, a 2005 film produced by Warner Brothers, which is part of the MPAA, which backs the type of pro-copyright interest that would seem to offend the beliefs of Anonymous. In fact, a portion of the proceeds from the sale of each mask actually works its way back to the studio. On the other hand, even if the mask sales put a little more money in the Hollywood coffers, having a globally recognizable brand is no doubt priceless for Anonymous.